Thank you for having me. I'm speaking to you from Texas, and I'm very sad that I can't speak French. But in the United States, they do not emphasize learning other languages in elementary school, which is really a shame, because I want to talk to the French people about the life cycle, the emissions, all the way through the life cycle of natural gas. Natural gas is what the industry calls it because they want it to sound safe and good. It's really methane gas and a lot of other hydrocarbons that come with it. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got here. I used to live, well, first of all, I worked for the oil and gas industry for 12 years. And I was very disgusted by their lack of ethics and their sense of entitlement, where they felt like if they had an idea, they were entitled to profit from that idea, no matter who it hurt. And it was just not an atmosphere that I wanted to spend my life working in. So I left and I moved to a farm in North Texas in 1996. I had been raised on a farm and I had horses all my life, but I was living in the city when I was working for oil and gas, and I wanted to get back on the farm and live on the same property with my horses and let my children experience growing up on a farm. So I moved there in 1996, and in 1997, George Mitchell, who is known as the father of fracking, drilled the first successful shale well, and that was very near where I lived. By 2005, fracking was booming because that's when Dick Cheney exempted fracking from oversight by some of our bedrock environmental laws. So that gave the industry a free rein to start fracking without having to worry about a lot of federal oversight. By then, my clean air had already turned brown and my well water turned black. And the air around me that used to be clean and fresh country air, it smelled horrible. And then sometime pretty soon after 2005, I learned about optical gas imaging technology that reveals invisible oil and gas pollution, the pollution that they deny is happening. Because as the fracking boom was going, and it started right in my area, and we kept complaining about these horrible odors that were making us sick. Do I need to stop for a minute?
Sorry, this is you, Sharon, or
someone is talking. I don't know who.
Okay, I don't know.
Okay, I'm just going to go on.
Everyone's in mute, so no, it's fine.
Yeah. So they were denying that any pollution was happening, but we were smelling hydrocarbon odors. People were getting sick. There were a lot of complaints. So when I learned about this technology, I knew that it could be a game changer for people. And in 2014, I was able to get my hands on a camera, and I became a certified optical gas imaging thermographer. At that time in the US, I was the first person who was not an oil and gas employee or a government regulator to get that certification. So I've spent 28 years documenting oil and gas harms, and 11 of those years have been with an optical gas imaging camera in my hand. And on the right, you can see a picture of what the camera looks like. Now I'm going to tell you how it works. Humans see in the visible 0.4 to 0.7 range where the rainbow is. Right here on the chart, you can see the rainbow area. That's where humans see. The camera detects hydrocarbons in the 3.2 to 3.4 micron range. And it has a filter that is calibrated to that range of the electromagnetic spectrum, but it also is cooled. There's a compressor inside the camera that cools that lens down to minus 200 degrees, and then it's better able to detect the hydrocarbons as they release. Over here you can see the pipe, that's a flare pipe. As the hydrocarbons are being released, they absorb infrared, and that's how the camera images them for us. It's really an instrument, but it has an onboard camera that records oil and gas pollution in real time. So this is a cartoon, not the reality. If we were looking at the reality, there would be oil spills, there would be smoke coming everywhere, there'd be a bunch of flames from flares. It would be very, very dirty. But this is a cartoon, and we're going to talk about what happens between the two green lines you see here. This is where it all begins, right here. They call it natural gas, and that's what they call what comes to your home and what creates energy, but it's really methane. And LNG is liquefied natural gas, which is also methane. Methane gas is not toxic. It brings toxic hitchhikers with it up the hole. It is an asphyxiant. So it displaces the air and you can suffocate if you're in a cloud of methane. It is a short-lived gas that only sticks around about 9 to 12 years, which makes it very important in our battle against climate change. If we stop methane, then it can have a really slow down what's happening. On a 10-year time frame, methane is 100 times more powerful at warming than CO2. And I can talk more about the global warming in the question and answer. But methane is a climate catastrophe brake. So if we want to stop climate catastrophe, we need to stop methane. Okay, so this is where all the methane starts, at the hole in the ground. Right there, they drill a hole in the ground, and that's where the methane starts escaping. That's where the other hydrocarbons that come with methane start creating impacts to the people who live there. It goes through all of this processes until it comes to either to your home where you cook with it, or to a power plant where it creates electricity. So we're going to talk about each phase: processing, compression, transportation, liquefaction, regasification, and power plants. Inside the green line is what we're talking about. Down here, this is about oil. So we're just talking about what's in between the green lines. Okay, my video is not showing on here, so I can't show you the video of that I wanted to show. Is it okay if I back out?
I love videos. You cannot play it?
No, is it?
There's a, like, if you press the button, it's not working at all.
Yeah, it's not. I don't even see the video here.
Oh, okay.
Can I back out of this and get on the original
Yeah,
presentation?
yeah. Sure,
Okay,
sure.
I'm sorry, let me just exit out of
Okay.
here. It'll take me a minute to get on the original one that I should have been on in the first place. I tried to make one with the name of the podcast on it, so
It's fine.
I should have just been on the original presentation. It'll take me just a minute to get there.
And can we share your presentation afterwards?
Yes.
Cool. Many people
Okay.
will ask it for it.
Now then, can you see this?
Not yet.
Can you? No. What do you see on your screen?
You.
Okay, well, I have to advance it to the, okay. And you've already seen that one.
No, but we don't see the presentation. We just only see. It's not
Oh,
sharing.
okay, I have to share it again then, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me exit out of here and go to here. Share. There we go. Now I think we're back
Yeah,
where we're
cool.
supposed.
Perfect.
Okay. And then this is what I wanted to show you. This is Total in the Barnett Shale. And this is the pollution that you can't see with your bare eye. And it is releasing from while they're drilling. Okay. Somehow. And this is in a neighborhood in Arlington, Texas, where people live right across the street. And you can see, it's a little bit faint, but you can see this pollution coming from this site. And a lot of times during the drilling phase, people complain about horrible odors. They complain about their house shaking and bright lights and a lot of noise. And the odors are coming from, I've never done a presentation in Teams, and so I'm not clear how I advance the slide.
What do you use usually?
Anything but Teams. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You're not the only one saying that.
So it has actually, it's backed me out of where I need to be to advance my slides. So I'm going to exit out. I don't really know how to navigate this. Now, can you see this slide? I'm still sharing my screen. Can you see the slide?
Yeah, yes, we see it.
Okay. Oh, okay, so I'm going to explain to you where the odors come from. As they're drilling, they have to use a mixture of what they call drilling mud, and they mix a lot of chemicals in it. It goes down a pipe. It comes out the end of the drill bit. The drill bit gets very hot, and the mud cools the drill bit. But as it flows down out of the hole in the drill bit, then pressure of the mud flowing through the drill bit pushes the mud back up whole. And when it comes up whole, it has pieces of shale, it has pieces of rock and everything that they need to get out of the mud, but it also is filled with gas. And so the mud is expensive, and they want to reuse it and recycle it. So they put it through what's called a gas buster. And can you see this red cylinder here? in the background,
Yeah.
that's the mud flows through different processes, and it's all that gas is off gassing to the air. And then as it goes through the gas buster, the mud falls down, and you can see the chart here where it says vent line. Well, a vent line is to release, it's to vent, release the gas. And so the gas goes out into the atmosphere. And a lot of people don't understand what is causing the odors that they're experiencing when during the drilling phase. And this is what's causing it, the gas that's in the mud.
And how long it is the drilling phase, and how many times it can happen on the field?
Well, to drill one well, they've really improved it now. It can take it could be done in a week or a few weeks. But now they have a pad site where they drill multiple wells. So right now, Total is drilling across the street from a preschool, and they're going to drill 10 wells. So they'll be drilling there for months. They'll drill a hole, they'll move the rig over, and then they drill another hole until they've drilled 10. So it's really disruptive to have something like this in your neighborhood. It is so loud. You can't even believe how loud it is. And people say it shakes their foundation. But what's even worse is when you get to the fracking phase. Do you see this image here? Yeah. And again, these are cartoons. So in the beginning, I would see the image there that's colored, and I would think, okay, but how does the oil and gas get into the pipe? Because it doesn't just go in the end of the pipe. I mean, we had very little information way back in, the early 2000s. Well, what you see on the right then was the next image that, after a few years, we started seeing this image, and we thought, okay, but how they're not drilling with a pipe that already has holes in it. So how do the holes get in there? So I'm going to tell you that next. And but first I want to tell you about the chemicals that they use for fracking. We've identified more than 1,000 chemicals and that they can use. They don't use all of them at the same time, but they can use, up to 1,000. There's 1,000 chemicals that they regularly use that we have identified. There's a lot that we haven't identified that are secret. About 100 are known endocrine disruptors, and they act on reproduction and development toxins. And there's about 48 are carcinogenic or potentially carcinogenic. They have also fracked with PFAS, and those are the forever chemicals. Are you familiar with those in France?
Yeah, we had recently a debate actually in France to ban them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we haven't banned them in Texas. In the United States. I don't know if they are still fracking with these chemicals because they can keep the chemicals, what they call proprietary chemicals, they can keep a secret. In 1998, the oil and gas waste was designated as non-hazardous. So when they bring in all these chemicals to the drill site, they have signs on the containers that hold these chemicals that says they're hazardous, that have the skull and crossbone poison. So then they mix all this stuff together and they pump it down hole where it mixes with heavy metals, radioactive material, and all of the hydrocarbons and stuff that are down hole. But when it's downhole, magic somehow happens, because when all that stuff comes back up whole, it's considered non-hazardous. Yeah, so that's the magic of our government.
They've been detoxified.
It's a huge giveaway to the industry, because if they had to handle their waste as the hazardous waste that it is, they would not be able to make a profit. So this was a big giveaway to the oil and gas industry. But now I'm going to tell you how those holes get in that pipe that you can see here. One day I was driving in South Texas, looking at oil and gas, and I saw this truck with a trailer, and the sign, the sign on the back of the truck says danger, explosives. And my first thought was, okay, you're driving through a city with open pipes of explosives. But then I drove up next to the truck and I saw that it was an oil and gas truck, and I was like, okay, I've got to follow this guy and find out what this is. And that's when I learned about perforating guns, and they use these perforating guns to put down the drill pipe and blow holes through the steel drill pipe and the cement casing, and also into the shale. So they use armor piercing explosives. And at that time, they were hauling them to the drill site in a truck like this. I don't know how they haul them now, but I do know that this is one of the most dangerous activities performed on a well site. There have been numerous accidents and in some cases fatalities. So they have to prepare the detonation, and then they have to put these pipes up on a crane and navigate those down the drill pipe. So when they're doing this, it's so dangerous that they don't allow cell phones, because they use electronic detonators to set off these armor piercing explosives. So they don't allow cell phones on the drill site. But my question is, what about your teenage daughter or son who is walking by the site, talking to their boyfriend or girlfriend on their cell phone? Because Total and other companies are putting these drill sites right in our neighborhoods. Now,
Like, how far is it? I mean, when you mean neighborhoods, like it's a city, and very close to the city, you have these fields?
I mean, in neighborhoods, like 300 feet from homes, daycares, schools, sometimes 600 feet, but closer than a football field to your home and your backyard where your children play.
I see.
That's how close they put these.
Okay.
So now I'm going to show you another video. I don't know if this is, I don't know how to get back to my presentation after I show this, but so after they blow holes in the pipe, then the oil and gas can come into the pipe and flow up to the hole, and it's under a lot of pressure downhole, so it's going to flow up to the hole. So this is what that looks like. This is called flowback, and this is in Arlington. There are homes just 300 feet from where this is happening, maybe 600 feet. These are some of the most dangerous emissions that happen from oil and gas. And this was happening on Memorial Day in Arlington, Texas. And that is a Total Energy site. Now, Total knew full well that if they did this on Memorial Day, there wouldn't be anybody around to, you know, to catch them, because everybody is, you know, they're all on vacation. They're all off. They're off work. The regulators, everybody is off work. So now I have to get back on my.
And what do you do to prevent that? Are there any collectors at the end of the pipe or whatever? I don't know. How do you manage to, you know, limit these emissions?
Those emissions, well, there are things that they could do. There are ways they could eliminate the emissions during the drilling phase and during flowback, but that would require burning them in a flare. And, you know, when people that close see a big pipe with a big flame on it, I mean, some of these flames can be as tall as a bus or taller. So, I mean, as tall as a bus is long. I mean, huge flames. It's very upsetting to them. But people who, you know, if they can't see the emissions, they can smell them, but they can't see them. So it's a problem, but it's somehow, and I wish I could understand the thought process. Somehow a flame is scarier to people than these horrible toxic emissions that can give you cancer and leukemia. And, you know, so, I mean, if I could figure that out, you know, I think we would make a lot of progress sooner.
So flaring destroys somehow the nocive gas.
Do what?
When you flare, so flaring is destroying somehow, I don't know, burning the most impactful gas. That's right. What it does.
It incinerates the gas.
It incinerates the gas.
If it's done properly. Okay. The other point in that is it's rarely done properly. So, you know, it is very rare that I find a flare that is fully combusting the emissions. Most of the flares have a big plume of emissions coming off the flare. And if you look on LinkedIn, the post that I put on this morning, you can see a video of a flare that's just, there's so much methane and hydrocarbons and really toxic stuff coming out of this flare. It's mind-blowing, and you can't see it at all with your bare eye. So,
but you're not dealing with the CO2 emissions, right? You're still emitting you're still emitting CO2 emissions, or it's also disappearing? Sorry for my ignorance on the matter.
It's emitting. So the flare, if it's not properly combusting, if it's not working right, which they rarely work right, it is still emitting a lot of methane and hydrocarbons like benzene, toluene, you know, xylene, horrible stuff. A flare that is burning properly emits CO2. So either way, we shouldn't be doing any of it. You know, either way, it's horrible for the climate. And sometimes there are cases where they have emitted so much CO2 in areas that, you know, mysteriously chickens would die, or, you know, dogs would get sick and not be, you know, because there's so much CO2 suddenly from this giant flare that is, or combustor. So anyway, there's just a lot of problems with that. I'm going to try to figure out what I did to get back on this presentation. I don't.
And will you show us some numbers regarding like how many fracking sites you have in the US, stuff like that? Or millions. If not, then you can mention that.
Millions of numbers. I don't even know
how many. Millions.
I think I have to stop sharing and then start sharing again to get back on here. Yeah. Okay. Oh, shoot. Let me do that again. Okay, now I think you can see it, and then I'm going to go to the next
Sorry,
one.
Sammy has a question. While you're doing that, Sammy, you can ask a question.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, Sharon.
Good
My
evening.
question would be, which one is the worst from global warming point of view between flaring the gas and letting it go to the atmosphere?
Well, from a global warming, okay, so methane, if you look at methane, one molecule of methane next to one molecule of CO2 on a 10-year time frame, methane is over 100 times more powerful at trapping heat than CO2. But methane only stays in the atmosphere about 10 years, 9 to 12. So what that means is if we stopped all the methane from oil and gas today, in a few years, I mean, in just a few years, some of that methane that's been in our atmosphere for 6, 7 years, that would be gone. And you know, it would slow. It's our climate catastrophe break. If we stopped it all the methane from oil and gas right now, in 10 years, it would be gone. The methane would be gone. The CO2 is still there, but getting rid of the methane gives us time to deal with the CO2. So that's why methane is so important. Not only that, if you release raw methane to the atmosphere, it also releases all the hydrocarbons and the other gases that come up the hole with the methane. So you're looking at communities that have way over the limit of benzene. There is no safe limit for benzene exposure. It is a very serious carcinogen and no amount is safe. But for regulatory purposes, they put an arbitrary amount on it. And of course, Texas allows more than any other state. So the people in communities are getting exposed to very high levels of benzene. There's very high levels of cancer, but there's also other things. There's neurotoxins, there's teratogens that harm the fetus. So there's a lot of health impacts. And you can go to an oil field. You know, I go there, I spend a few days, I might spend 5 days. I have spent 10. I really am wanting to get home because I'm tired of headaches. I'm tired of my eyes being red all the time. You know, you feel like you're having intense allergies, and that's just minor. That's a minor impact compared to what some of these people who have to live with this day in and day out. It's really horrible. So releasing raw methane to the atmosphere is a huge impact to the people who live there, and it's a huge impact to our climate, and it should not happen. But burning it causes CO2, and CO2 stays around for over a century. So we have to deal with that too. So the bottom line is we have all the technology we need to transition right now. We have battery backup. We know that you can transition to 100% renewable energy. There are places that are doing it right now, and they're having success. But the oil and gas industry doesn't just pollute our air and our land and our water. They pollute our system of governance. So they put out so much propaganda, and they have endless amounts of money to spend confusing people to, governments, and they are in the ear of our elected officials all the time. They are at their doorstep, knocking at their door every single day. And our elected officials listen to them when they don't listen to us. And that's not just the US. It happens in France. It happens all over Europe. The European Union is tried to release these really good methane rules. But if you stick by the EU methane rules, you will not be able to import LNG from the US because it is too dirty. And so, Donald Trump is over there pressuring other countries in the Europe to accept our gas from the US and to water down the methane rules from the European Union. And it's working, and this is all blowing my mind because we have clear science that is telling us we have to stop using fossil fuels. And way back in 2001, the International Energy Agency, that is not a liberal organization, and in the US, liberals are seen as the more progressive political party. The International Energy Agency is conservative, and they said in 2001, we must stop all new investment in oil and gas. And what have we done? 4 more years of building out more oil and gas infrastructure that is pushing our climate to the brink. So I guess at some point, climate change will be so bad, maybe politicians will look away from the money they get from oil and gas and start looking at how much it's costing to deal with the disasters. I don't know, but that's my rant about releasing methane versus burning it. Neither one is acceptable.
But just one comment here. I mean, 2 comments. One is indeed recently in a report, the International Energy Agency mentioned that hunting and decreasing methane leakage is one of the most powerful climate actions by 2030. So that's exactly in line with what you're saying. And the US actually has a very big methane problem. It's the most they have the most leakage actually among all countries which are in the oil fields, as far as I understand. My second comment is that not all countries they have oil fields and gas fields. So you do have the majority of the countries which are importing oil and gas. So regardless of the money they make, they can also have other solutions, on other energy solutions where which they control a bit more. So let's bet on that also, like China, for example. No?
Yeah, China
and
is
even Europe actually. Even Europe, we're trying. We're trying at least.
Right. I think the best thing for Europe to do is, instead of building out new LNG import terminals, spend that money, building out renewable infrastructure, because it just doesn't make sense. And wait until I show you the emissions from import terminals. They're crazy. I mean, you know, it's just, it is insane that they're doing this, and they continue to tell people it's clean energy. And I can prove to you that it is not. I mean, if I could come to France and show you what your LNG import terminals, wherever you're importing it, looks like, and what the people near
Please
it
do
are.
so. I
But
hope people will hear that. I agree. I mean, clearly the recent studies show, for example, green hydrogen. You know, the norms of green hydrogen, and of blue hydrogen. Sorry, they all depend actually on the percentage of the methane leakage. Depending on this percentage, gas, you know, is either like coal. It can be like coal actually in terms of emissions. So there is a big issue here regarding the norms in hydrogen. If you want really hydrogen to be low carbon, then your methane leakage, you know, should be very minimum, and industry has to do something about that.
right. But okay, but here's the other part, and I'm going to show you this in the next slide. First of all, it's not leaks, and we should really stop using the word leaks with methane, because when you analyze industry's own data, it shows that only 6% of the methane comes from an actual unintentional leak. The rest of it is from required intentional releases. And that's because I can just show you, show you this next video. I think this is the one. This is, okay, this is a pressure release from Total in Fort Worth. That valve you see on top of the pipe, its purpose is to release.
No, we don't see it, Sharon.
You don't see it?
No.
Gosh.
It's a wonderful tool. You remember this
Okay.
one.
Well, let me see what I can do about this. Okay, let me.
So apparently it works only if you do it twice. It's the second time which will work.
Okay, well, I think I have to do it every time I want to show
Yeah.
a video.
Sorry for that.
That's okay. You know, as far as challenges in my life, this is a minor one. Can you see now? Can you see it?
Yeah, perfect.
Can you see what we're looking at?
Yeah, super.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it in this view instead of putting it in presentation view. I think that's where we're getting mixed up. You can see, can you see the slides over here on the left?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to leave it in presentation view if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. No, and I get you actually. Sometimes also it happens to me also. So
This is a tank right here that holds liquids, and this is a pipe that's stuck in the tank, and this is a valve. So watch this video, and this is Total Energies in Fort Worth. That pipe, that valve right there is a pressure release valve.
crazy.
Its purpose is to release gas when the pressure builds up in the tank, because the tanks were meant to hold liquids. This is a tank hatch. You can see the gas escaping around this tank hatch. And I want to tell you, this gas smelled horrible. It is just about 50 yards from the Trinity River, with a path where people walk to exercise. Now I'm going to show you right here what's happening, because the tanks were meant to hold liquids, but the liquids have gas mixed in with them. So you can see how the gas bubbles up, and it bubbles up to the top, and it creates pressure. And this is the valve you're seeing right here that's releasing that gas. If they don't release this gas, the tanks will blow up. And it's not just the tanks, it's all the equipment is steel. And the pressure from the gas builds up in this steel, and they have to release it. It is not an option.
Yeah,
so
it's not a leak. I agree with you. Okay, I get you.
It is not a question of methane leaks.
Yeah.
Unintentional leaks. I'm going to show you a real leak in a minute, and it is intentional by design releases that are required. And then they have a lot of other kinds of releases. This is an example of that is very harmful to the workers. It's called manual gauging and sampling. There's another way that the industry can do this that is not a big, it's not a big heavy lift, but and not extraordinarily expensive for them to convert, but they just don't want to. And about 3 that we know of, it's hard to track how many men are killed or workers are killed doing this. What they're doing is they open the hatch on top of the tank and they stick instruments in there to gauge the level of liquids in the tank and to take samples of the liquid. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Right there, he is opening that hatch on top, and this is what happens when he opens the hatch.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Because the gas is under pressure, it's an intense exposure to the workers, and it will displace oxygen. So it's, Total Energy does this in our neighborhoods. And there was a daycare, a preschool, where little black babies go to preschool. And Total did this. They do it regularly. And thank goodness no babies were there in the play yard at the time, but the director and one of her employees were there, and they were overcome with these fumes and had to run it in the house. They were so bad. So this is
there is a, how do you call them, hydrocarbon inside, or it's only methane?
It's hydrocarbons all mixed. This is gas that has not been processed. So the way that the industry has to, their solution that they have to solve this is technology. So when, the IEA was saying, well, there's a way to stop these leaks. Well, you're looking at one of them right there in this video. This is one of industry's solution is vapor recovery systems. And we find them failing about 75 to 80% of the time. And here's an example. This site, we have recorded releases like this many, many times.
And so Sharon, when you say you're spending 4 or 5 days on the site, are you, putting a Total costume and you're there like a worker, or you're what do you how do you get there and spend 4 days filming all that?
I don't spend 4 days at one site, and I never get off of public property. I do not trespass on their property. I am so hated and despised by the industry that if I set one toe on their property, they would immediately have me jailed. I would be buried. So I always stay on public property. And, I don't stay at one site. I might, if I'm there 5 days, I might visit 15 or 20 sites a day. So, I come back with a lot of data and a lot of videos. I just got back from the Eagle Ford Shale in South Texas And I was there for 2 days and just brought back a lot of just horrific. Well, we visited this site you're looking at right there. And if you go on LinkedIn and look at the post I put this morning, it's not my last post, but it's my last, next to the last post. It is from this site that you're looking at right here. So, we work from daylight to dark and bring back a bunch of data to try to show people that, despite industry's claims, they're not doing this right. And I want to go to the next slide, because this is where the industry, they talk about their leaks. And this is from the greenhouse gas reporting program that they report to the government. And so this is the makeup of the methane emission. And down here you can see fugitive is another name for leaks, accidental. You don't let a fugitive loose on purpose. And you can see that's 6%. So what you see here in this image, you can see the tops of the tanks with the pressure relief valve, and that is an intentional release required to protect equipment. Now, some of the sites have vapor recovery systems instead of these pressure relief valves, but I just showed you how that works. It doesn't, I'm not saying vapor recovery systems and the industry's technology can't work. I'm saying I find it not working all the time. And so I have an opinion about why it's not working. And that's because they don't want to spend the money doing maintenance and repair on the equipment. They just want to check the box and say, we got a vapor recovery. BP has vapor recovery on all of our production sites. Check that box. Guess what? They don't check it to see if it's working. So the next slide I'm going to show you, this is an unintentional leak. And you can see they've put duct tape on it, everybody's favorite tape, to fix something that's broken. So instead of repairing this, they just put this duct tape on there. But you can see the difference in a leak. This is a pretty bad leak, but it's still just a leak. It's an unintentional leak, not an intentional release. So let's see. Okay, this is the industry lies about their emissions, and they have been reporting emissions to the federal government for about 11 years, I think now, since 2011. I think that, no, that's more than 11 years. That's like 15. I'm terrible at math. Yeah. So, that's a lot of lying. For this long, they have lied, and the emissions are 5 to 6 times higher normally than what they admit. It's this is the amount of lying right here. So if you or I lied about our taxes, if we underestimated our taxes for that long, I know in the US they would call that fraud, but the industry just gets away with it. So,
and look, Sharon, I can somehow understand that people from the industry would hate you. Although, to be fair, we're all in the same mess, right? So we're all facing, the consequences of CO2 emissions and poisonous gas in our environment. So regardless of, if you are in the industry or not, you'll still be impacted. So you may want, and even more if you're in the industry, you may want to do it right somehow. So, but I can somehow understand that they won't like, you saying this kind of thing, because they would, say that it's some kind of criticism of of what they do, and so it impacts
Yeah.
their their I don't know, image. But still, I would imagine that it's possible for them to also understand that they have to do it right. But what's the impact on citizens? For example, in Texas, there's it's a state where oil and gas is predominant, but there's also a lot of renewable energy and battery and so on. But still, it's clearly an oil state. So what's how citizens they perceive your findings?
How city what?
How citizens perceive your findings and your what you showed them.
Well, the people who live in the cities are horrified by it. But like, for example, in Arlington, they don't want to pay any attention to it. They are getting a lot of money from the industry, and they want to do things like have an entertainment center. That's where they have a big stadium there where sports are played, and they want to have a fancy hotels and all of that stuff in there. And so people fly in and visit and they make money that way. But the people who live there, I mean, it's really sad to go to a council meeting. The city council, they make up the rules, and they can deny a permit. They claim that they can't without the industry suing them. But so what? I mean, maybe you have to fight a lawsuit from the industry to protect your people, but they don't really, that's not what's important to them. And I have seen people in Arlington, hundreds of people turn up and make these beautiful, impassionate speeches. Please protect us. And every time they vote to permit more drilling. And I mean,
that's my point. Actually, they would still vote, conservative and people supporting fossil fuel, whereas you present these results and you're saying that they would be horrified. But there's a dystopia here somehow.
well, so there's a gap between what, people, not everybody sees this information. How do you get this information to the public?
Yeah.
May 13th, I took a video of Elon Musk's site in Memphis where he's doing the XAI. And I guess you maybe have heard about that, but people in Memphis, Tennessee, where he's put these gas power plants, they're choking, they're sick, they're complaining. There's been some media coverage over it, but media was terrified to show the video that I took. Now, we finally got a media, they're going to run the story Thursday, but I mean, how do you get this information out to people?
That's the whole point. And so, for example, do you organize? I don't know. I have no idea. Just asking questions. Do you organize meetings in town halls? Is it possible, or it's, I don't know.
So many meetings.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
So many podcasts. So many.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on the news and TV all the time, but our news is just filled up with Trump does this, Trump does, every day there's something. It's constant chaos, and people might see this. They might see, a 2-minute news story about emissions, but they're worried about how they're going to buy groceries when the grocery stores are charging us for the tariffs. We are paying for the tariffs. So now everything is super expensive. And I don't know. I mean, at some point, I think, I don't know. We have to, the people have to rise up. And
we're many actually discussing that, how to diffuse information. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. I think, it needs to be saturated. The evidence that I bring needs to be saturated in the media,
Yes.
like the industry saturates the media.
Yeah.
But if you think about the tobacco industry, they did the same thing. They saturated the media with all their information and misinformation and lies about cigarettes. But then there was a turning point when people rose up and went, this is killing us. And then the tobacco industry was no longer allowed to have this misleading advertisements. They can't advertise cigarettes on the TV and radio and everything anymore. And I feel like that's where we need to go with the oil and gas industry, but they're so powerful. So,
but it's very costly now when you look at the cost for the oil and gas industry per year. This information has a cost, and it's funded by billionaires because it costs hundreds of millions. So we should have our billionaires in the energy transition and more coordination and launch communication strategies. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, we should. I still have quite a few slides to get through. So I'm going to try to talk about them fast. Y'all can ask questions. This is another big problem. This is a flare that is supposed to be burning the gas. So burning the gas would create CO2, but putting out just raw gas like this is very harmful to the people who live by. It hurts the regional air quality, and it hurts climate change. They have technology that is supposed to monitor and relight the flares and all of that. It doesn't work because I don't know why it's not working. Probably because they don't have it repaired and cleaned. It needs to be cleaned and repaired all the time. And guess what? They're laying off people as fast as they can because they don't want to pay for workers. This is an example of a blowdown. So when there's a problem on the site, they just blow all the gas out into the air. Sometimes they do this because they don't like the specs of the gas. It's not the right specs. So they just blow it all out into our atmosphere, using our atmosphere as a dump. And you may think, okay, but that doesn't happen that often. Yeah, it does. I'm going to speed this video up so you can see more of it. It happens. I find this happening all the time. They are supposed to, now it's from the other side of the plant, they're supposed to report these emission events. This event was not reported. I checked for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was never reported. We watched it for an hour. It was constantly emitting during that hour, just constantly emitting this. Not constantly, it would stop a little bit and then it would start again. So it was just a really serious ongoing leak. I don't know how long it lasted. It could have lasted for days for all I know, but we couldn't just stay there forever and watch it. So here's, this is a compressor site in Arlington, Texas. So, we're talking about each phase. We just finished talking about the production phase. Now we're talking about compression. So this is a compressor station, but it also has processing equipment. And these are some of the emissions. Right on the other side of that tree line are a bunch of buildings. There's a restaurant. There's a children's karate school. There's a doctor's office. On the fence line, like 50 feet away from this site. And I have been to this site many, many, many times. I'm going to speed it up so that we can watch, we can finish this presentation. Now this next one is still, this is a compressor station. We found this blowdown event happening. Again, we were there for an hour just watching this and filming this blowdown event. That is an intense amount of gas that they're just blowing into our atmosphere. I was with a journalist from Japan, and the journalist from Japan kept telling me they wanted to go to this site because it was making a horrible noise the day before. So when they described the noise to me, I knew that that was probably a blowdown event. It sounds like you're under a jet engine because the gas is coming out with such force. It's coming out right here from these vents. And when we got there, sure enough, it was a blowdown event. So was it going on for 2 days or 5 days or what? I don't know. But it was never reported to the state. So, you know, nobody knows how often this is happening. And this is an example of a compressor station that is normal. This is normal operations. So what you see, the white is very bright, the very bright white, that's heat. And then there's an exhaust coming out. But this right here and this, that is where they are venting the gas. And I always thought, oh, the point of a compressor is to compress the gas and put it in a pipeline. So I didn't expect them to be dumping that gas into the air. And people say, oh, well, it's valuable. They wouldn't do that. Well, you're looking at it right here. So, you know, your lying eyes, that's what's happening. And it happens a lot. I have many, many videos of compressors just dumping the gas into the air. So what happens is the gas is coming in at too high a pressure rate. It's higher than what the pipeline can handle. So they have to dump it because it's under too much pressure. And here, this is a pipeline where they had a problem on the pipeline somewhere up or downstream on this pipeline, and they had to blow all the air out of the pipeline. Again, we were here about an hour. It was happening when we got there. We don't know how long it lasted because we left after about an hour. We were with a French journalist, and you know, they never reported it. So nobody knows. When people ask how often this happens, I don't know. I see it all the time. I see it. I've taken a lot of these kind of videos. Okay, now we're to the liquefaction process. So we went through the production process. We went through some processing and some compression. It got in the pipeline. It finally made it to the liquefaction plant. And here's what that looks like. And recent studies from Robert Howarth with Cornell shows that the greenhouse gas footprint of liquefied natural gas from the United States is more than that of coal. As a fuel source, it is 33% greater than for coal due to the greenhouse gas footprint.
Yeah.
And so this is why you shouldn't be using LNG. It's a little bit hard to see on this video, especially when it's so tiny, but you can see that plume right there, just blasting out of this liquefaction plant.
You know, we're not well informed about that, to be fair. Even people working in the energy sector, they may not know, you know, what you're showing. And many of us bought the gas is clean story in 2010, something like that. And only recently we got a lot of, you know, studies saying, hey guys, it's actually closer to coal if you take into account all these emissions. But still, you know, we don't picture ourselves clearly where it's coming from, you know. So it's really good to have these elements.
And don't feel bad. Everybody over here bought the natural gas is clean. Most people still believe that.
Exactly.
If I stood on the street corner in Dallas, Texas, and stopped people and said, "Hey, have you ever seen a video that makes the natural gas pollution visible?" They would go, "What are you talking about? You know what?" Yeah, no, I've never seen that. That's not real. So they just don't know. This next, this is the regasification process. So I never got to get a video of where they regasify the gas at an import terminal. So this is what an import terminal will look like in Europe. And this is Japan. And Japan has the best engineers in the world. So you would think that they would do a better job. We got on this beautiful sailboat in Japan and went to check out the regasification site. We had to sail across Tokyo Bay, and there I am freezing to death to look at the Fitsu LNG import terminal. And that's what it looks like with the bare eye. You can't see anything. And there you can see the emissions through the optical gas imaging.
It's like a joke.
It's what?
No, it's like a joke. I mean, honestly, it's it's like a joke. It's anywhere you go, it's like fumes, clouds of emissions.
You know what the joke is? They call me a methane hunter. The thought that I have to hunt for methane is a joke.
Exactly. There's no hunting at all. It's just seeing through a camera, and it's everywhere. It's crazy.
It's everywhere. So this is just so much. And I have to point out that this is steam because the industry says, "Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about because that's steam." Well, that little bit right there, that little bit was steam. The rest of it is not steam. You can easily tell the difference. And the way you know that it's steam is because you can see it with your bare eyes. There's some more steam right there that I'm just pointing out so the industry won't say I don't know what I'm talking about, but you can see how different it looks from the emissions. It's, the characteristics are different, and when we get certified, we're taught to know the difference between steam and the emissions. And then it's going to go in just a second to this is a big place where they're supposed to be combusting some of the gas, and it's going over that cloud that looks like a bear. Looks like the head of a bear, but it's going way off out into the distance. So, all the people in Japan who live near that site they're getting gassed. And then this is what it looks like in a power plant. So this is a power plant in El Paso, Texas. I put my iPhone up to the screen on the camera so I could show what the power plant looked like. It was at night, and this is this is clean natural gas.
This is mountains of fumes. These are mountains of fumes.
When you think about Japan, you think the greatest engineers in the world, and I was like, well, I may not see that much from their
to be super clean, super high technology, and super clean.
Yeah, here's Japan. Here's how well they're doing on their power plants. Look at how it's just blasting out of there. And some of that is heat. You can see that right here it's hot, but you look at the temperature scale, and this is ambient temperature. This part up here is what's hot. So you can see that it's cooling off very quickly. And there you can see how far it's traveling out. And, again, that's in Japan, where You would think they might do a little better than the US, but you know,
But there are norms now. In this gas, you may not have a lot of poisonous gas. No, maybe you have
you may not have a lot of what?
poisonous gas, or I don't know how you call
Well,
it.
this gas has been processed,
It has
so
been processed, no?
it won't have as much of the hydrocarbons,
Yes.
you know, the VOCs, the
Mm.
volatile organic compounds. It'll still have methane. So I just want to
Methane.
go just this last slide. I stole this from Al Gore. That blue line is our troposphere. So if you look, that blue line is 3.7 to 10 miles. That is where all of our oxygen and the other gases for life required for us to live are in that little blue line. That's where weather happens. That's where water vapor clouds and precipitation form. That's where the water cycle is. And that is where all of this stuff I just showed you is going into our troposphere, not out here, right here. So if you think about what I just showed you, all those gases, you can kind of see how that would form a blanket, because that's the only place it has to go. So that's what we're doing to ourselves. And then I just have a summary there. Oh, and this is my favorite cartoon.
Yeah.
Honey, come look. I found some information all the world's top scientists and doctors missed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the ridiculousness of what we're dealing with the misinformation. And these are all the places where I do social media. So I'm on Blue Sky. I am not on Twitter anymore. I'm not on Facebook. Yeah.
And
I'm on
where do you find fundings?
funding.
Yeah.
That's hard. Our funding comes from foundations and it's a collaboration or a collective. It's not a collaboration. It's a collective of Texas landowners, mineral owners, high net worth individuals in Texas. They're anonymous.
Excellent. So you do have people involved in extraction, still financing actually your work.
Well, actually, it's the way that our land ownership in the U.S., we have what is called a split estate. So you can buy a piece of property and you might own the surface, but someone else might own the minerals. And so, or you can sometimes buy a piece of property and own both. But so back in the Depression, 1920s, a lot of people who owned land needed money. And so they sold their mineral rights, which is the right to what's under the property, not the water, but the minerals that are under the property. So the oil and the gas and other minerals. And they sold those because they didn't know how valuable they were and they needed the money. And so some people went out and bought a whole lot of these minerals. And now, then when the fracking boom started, some people who had trust funds set up and, their grandfather or great grandfather bought up all these minerals, they were suddenly wealthy and they didn't even know that this was in their trust fund. And so, people who are fundamentally opposed to oil and gas production can become wealthy from oil and gas production and not even want to participate in that. So it's a really messed up thing. Sometimes people who own land are happy to lease their minerals, but you lose a lot of control of your land if you do. You can get a lot of money, and there are people who have leased their minerals and made a lot of money, and they moved away and they left their neighbors to deal with the horrible pollution. It's not a real moral way for us to, to live and to make money, to be profiting from the harm that happens to other people. That's the kind of ethical dilemma that working in the oil and gas industry was creating for me. I could not, I mean, I didn't really know about the harm that the pollution when I was working in the industry, but I knew that the people who were in power in the industry, they didn't care what happened to other people. So that was disturbing to me. So that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's from my colleagues in the oil and gas industry seem to have don't really like actually to harm people, and so they are fighting for norms, etc. internally. They're happy also to move from, for example, in Total, from the oil and gas to renewable. But to be fair, I found it, it's fine if you work in the oil and gas industry as long as you need to transform these sectors if they can. And that still will be oil and gas for a few decades. So although the demand has to decrease a lot, so you can work from the inside also. For me, I don't see any problem. But
well,
it's
I don't know. That is like a twist there. I don't know. We do need oil and gas, but we do not need it for energy. So we're going to need oil and gas for a while, but we don't need. I mean, they're expanding like a contagion over here.
yeah, well,
And
so that's
we don't
wrong.
need that.
No,
They're
you don't
just
need that.
they're just after profit. And at this point, there's no any kind of oil and gas production is not responsible. People say, "Oh, I do it responsibly." No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's not responsible to produce oil and gas currently. Now, we've got plenty. They could stop right now and only produce it under very strict conditions when they absolutely need it for something, but they don't do that. It's all, and it's every country, even Norway, where they say, oh, we have really strict blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
There are people in Norway who are mad about all the pollution. So, yeah.
Okay. So are there a few questions, guys? Do you have a few questions? Do you have any questions? I see there are a few.
I've got one, if I may.
Yes.
I was looking at the pictures of the power plants in Texas, and I was very surprised that there is such a high amount of leak, because the leakage in the power plant has an impact on the cost of the electricity production. So I'm surprised that they don't operate the power plant in a way that reduces leaks to almost zero.
Those weren't leaks. Like I said in the presentation, only 6% of the methane that's released is from a leak. So most of that is methane. So by the time it gets to the power plant, it should have been processed enough that most of the toxic, benzene and all of that, is the volatile organic compounds are gone, but it's never going to be processed to where they're completely gone. So what you saw emitting would be uncombusted or partially combusted methane, which creates formaldehyde, and volatile organic compounds and particulate matter, because when they combust methane, it's going to create particulate matter. And the particulate matter is especially harmful for people who breathe that in. Once you breathe it in, you can't get it out of your body, and it can lodge in your organs. It's particularly harmful for the heart, but soot can also lodge in your brain. And there have been some studies that show it can cause Alzheimer's like lesions in children's brains. So it's very harmful. Any kind of particulate matter. I don't know if if a natural gas or methane gas power plant creates soot, but I think it does. I know that a lot of flares create soot, which is black carbon, and black carbon is a very powerful actor on the climate. So, you know, if you look at the permit for a power plant, they admit what they're going to release. And so they will say on there, particulate matter, a couple of different kinds like PM2, 2.5, PM10, and they will say, you know, it's going to release methane and volatile organic compounds. So they admit it.
Okay.
You know, the process, as you say, it's yes, you do you lose gas with these leaks, but you need to factor the cost of the investment, you know, and the energy also it requires to process this gas. And my understanding is that it costs a lot actually in terms of energy and investment to have a meaningful impact. And so, you know, in terms of carbon tax, for example, the price of the carbon, it's nowhere near the 100. You need much more than that. So it will you know impact the cost, and that's why it's not done.
We don't have a carbon tax here.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's in the Middle East,
Yeah.
for example, we are using this benchmark to say, okay, how much it would cost, you know, to pay for this investment. And as far as I understand, it's in the order of 200 something in the carbon.
And in the gas from Texas has been very, very cheap the last few years. Most of last year, gas from the Permian Basin, which is in Texas and New Mexico, was negative. So they had to actually pay to put it in a pipeline and have it taken away. So that's one reason a lot of it's going out into the air, because it's going to cost them money. They can't sell it and make anything. They've overproduced gas in the US. There's just a lot of gas.
Okay, guys, any more questions?
Yes, I have one question, because in my memory, I read reports saying that these emissions, they're not fugitives. Okay, some can be turned into profit when you stop emitting them, and you are. I thought that it seems it's not that simple. Do you have a figure for at least or Texas, USA, or in the world, how much methane emissions can be fixed with a profit?
I have seen figures, and I don't remember them, because that is a very complicated problem. Because first of all, I know that there are environmental groups who are nonprofits that say if the industry just uses this technology, it will pay for itself in the gas that they save. that is such a naive, simplistic way to view it, because first of all, like I just said, I think this week gas in the Permian was less than 50 cents per MMBTU. Most of last year it was negative. So they're not, if it's going to be 100% cost to them to buy the technology, they are not going to recoup. It's going to cost them more money to buy the technology, and the gas that they capture is going to cost them even more money because it's worthless. And then in order for that technology to work, and I've talked with a lot of industry workers who are very frustrated by this, because I say the technology doesn't work, and they say, well, it can work. So I believe it can work to an extent, but what they tell me is it needs weekly cleaning, repair, maintenance, and replacing parts. That requires a lot of personnel. We have millions of oil and gas sites. That requires a lot of personnel. I think, which big company, was it Chevron, that just said they're laying off 800 workers in Texas? So in order for them, it's just very complicated. If they put this technology on the site, then they have to have somebody constantly repairing and maintaining this technology, which costs a lot of money. And then it's capturing more gas, which is worthless. So it's a very simplistic way to look at it, to say that they can put this technology on these sites and it will pay for itself. And, that's just not realistic.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Because I had in mind $1 or $2 per MBTU, and so negative or less than $1 is so insane. Okay, so I understand why it's more complicated than I thought. Thanks a lot. So
Okay.
if the economic doesn't make sense, only political pressure and citizen pressure can work, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, you would have to have, okay, well, in order for, you have to create incentive, and that means they have to have really severe penalties. And that means there has to be someone giving these penalties. So again, there are regulations on the books here, but they're not enforced. And so in order to have in the United States, we have never had a real regulatory system. It's based on self-reporting. So that's like if you drink an extra beer, you drink 2 beers instead of just one, and you get in your car and you drive home and you call the police and say, I drove home drunk, come give me a ticket, right? That happens, right? You do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody does that.
Obviously.
Do you think the industry is going to do that? That's ridiculous. So it's a self-reporting system. So in order for it to ever work, a regulation, they would have to hire an army of people. And because, right, we've got millions of oil and gas sites. So how often are you going to visit these sites? You're going to visit them once a month? Well, they're going to know you're coming. They're going to fix everything, and then you leave and they're, so how will that even work? Who is going to pay for all those people? Who's going to pay for their vehicles, for their scientific equipment they need? It doesn't make sense when we have we have alternatives. So it's time to stop putting lipstick on a pig. And I don't know if that translates into French, but you know, that's what we're doing. We keep trying to put lipstick on this pig, and it's time to, the pig doesn't like the lipstick. It doesn't want the lipstick. We can use renewables instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Indeed.
100% agree on that. Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
No more questions. So for me, it's close to midnight now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's last time we had, you remember with Christian, you know, it was like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. for me. So, yeah. But that's, you know, the time where, you know, we have this session, so it's fine. Okay, guys.
I may have just one question to
Zaid.
finish with.
Zaid
Yes.
is, you know, he's French, but he's currently in UK and he works in for EDF in nuclear.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I'm on the project of Hinkley Point C nuclear new built power station. So yeah, if you have any question about it, but that's not the point. Thanks, Karim, for introducing me. So I may have one question about your opinion, Sharon, on the students, or I would say the junior engineers who wants to work in the energy. Are they ashamed to go in oil and gas, or it's okay-ish to go in oil and gas? Okay, it's a shame for the planet, but we need money because we have to reimburse our loans and everything, because because studies are really expensive in the US. So I don't know. What's your opinion? Do you meet sometimes students and so on? And what's the point, please?
Yeah, so a lot of what they learn can translate to renewable energies. But here's the deal. We have, like I said, they're just drilling holes like mad. And I didn't even talk about this side of the problem. We have a lot of holes all over the US, and the industry has just walked away, and they've left these holes, and they're still polluting, and they have to be plugged. And some of them are very complicated. In some cases, these old wells are bubbling up toxic liquids from the earth. It's a whole nother hour. You would 2 hours to talk about that. And that I'm not like an expert in that side, but I do know enough to know that there will be decades of work for engineers, because there are huge problems to solve in cleaning up the oil and gas industry's mess. And you know, what we should be doing right now is getting all of the profit from the oil and gas industry to pay to clean up their mess. But, you know, we have Donald Trump in office who asked the industry for $1 billion and got $1 billion. So that's not going to happen. And what needs to happen is like Norway, we need to nationalize the industry and take the profits to clean up the mess. But that's not going to happen here. But at any rate, the question is, you know, if one of my sons were going to school right now, I would say, in fact, I did say, be an electrical engineer. That's what I would do. If you're going to go through engineering, be an electrical engineer. But if you got a different kind of engineering degree, there's still going to be so much oil and gas work to clean up this mess. And that way you can feel good about it. I know workers who have been in the industry for a long time, and they talk to me because they want those jobs. They want to clean up the mess because they have children, they're concerned about it, and they want to start cleaning up the mess. We just need political will to make that happen.
Okay, and that's why I did an electrical engineering degree. Thanks, Sharon.
So my son came in one night, and I mean, he started in electrical engineering when he was 16, and he came in the living room one night and said, "Mom, I want to change my major." I said, "What to?" And he said, "Music." Okay, so yeah, I'm still helping him because it's hard to make money. No matter how talented you are, it is hard to make money as a musician.
That's true. That's true. Thanks, Sharon, for your complete answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So basically, you can feel good working in the oil and gas industry. It's if it's for closing business. You know?
Yeah, right. And
Sad,
I've
but also, yeah.
I've got another call coming up in 8 minutes, so I'm going to have
Let's
to
stop here. Look, Sharon, wonderful. Honestly, I learn a lot. It's very much concrete now, and I realize the problem. I hope everyone, everyone that can see that, it will be. I will try to diffuse the presentation as much as I can, and indeed, it should be part of our basic knowledge, actually, in the energy sector. So, hopefully, it's a fantastic job that you're doing, and thank you very much for that. You're with your camera everywhere, every day, not every day, but a lot for many years, and it's very helpful.
Well, thank you for having me. This was fun. I like the informal way that you do it, and let's stay in touch, because I think we all need to be, it's going to take all of us to solve these problems.
Sharon, everyone, I speak to, many people around the world in the energy transition, and we all come to the same conclusion, try to organize our communication through networks, try to harmonize some kind of narrative, etc., etc. So, it's just, time. It's the time now. So before we were not exactly like that in the energy transition. We were focusing on, growing our renewable energy capacity, etc. Less communication towards citizens. I mean, at least in Europe, it was like that. We really focused on government, regulatory framework, etc., and we completely left out citizen. And so, who can read a paper from the International Energy Agency? To be fair, who is going to download, this 100 pages document and read a study? We need to have formats much more adapted, etc. So I can see the communication changing a bit, at least in international organization. I'm a board member of the Global Solar Council, and I can see this discussion happening. So hopefully, we'll progress on this part.
Right, and if any of y'all want to take a really horrifying, disgusting vacation, you can come to Texas and ride around the oil field with me. You won't like it.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that it's horrible, it's smelly, it's dirty, it's dusty, the food is horrifying. You would be appalled. You would not even believe it.
That's great. It's a great proposal, Sharon.
Right, but just bring me some macaroons.
Okay, so guys, I'm going to sleep now.
Okay, I'm going to jump off. I've got a call coming in.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Ciao,
Thanks a
ciao.
lot.
Bye.
Bye.
The good work.